Set my recording up. Make sure my stream's going. And get back into the Hello World project from yesterday. And give it a second to start on it. Okay, so we left off looking at this and working with the designer here. The next thing we want to do is go over to project. Under app, Java, here, that first source set, I'm going to open up main activity. Okay, so you should be into main activity now, which is where we're going to do the primary portion of our coding. Okay, so what we want to do and what we want to set up is we want to be able to respond to when the user clicks on the login button, right? So does anybody remember what one of the first things that I did in most of those code examples was? What was the first thing I did at the top of the file?
You made a button object?
Made a button variable, right? I made a member variable to hold my widgets, okay? So I'm going to do that up here. I'm going to say private button, and this is going to be main login button. Okay, so because I will probably want to refer to the button in my code at some point. Okay, I hit Alt-Enter there. That will do the automatic import there. Also, while I'm at it, I also want to reference to both of the input boxes, right? I want to reference to both of the input boxes that are on screen. So I'm going to add that in here too. So I'm going to say private edit text. Edit text is what we use for an input box. And this would be main email input. That's what I called it. Main email input, and private edit text main password input. So I'm going to declare those three so that we have access to them later. I'm going to make this bigger. There we go. And I'm going to cut out the code that we had there previously, keeping the set content view and keeping the on grade. Okay. So that's step number one. And step number one is to define your member variables based on what widgets, what views you'll need to have access to. Notice that I'm not having access. I'm not creating a variable for every single thing that's in my layout. Okay. What widgets are in our layout, but I didn't create member variables for?
Like labels.
Yeah. So I put two labels or text views. Right. I didn't put those in here because I'm not going to access them in the code. Okay. They're going to be in the layout, but we're not going to write any code against them. Does that make sense? If I was going to write code against those labels, then I would include them. But those are the only things I need for the time being. Okay. Next thing up is we want to find the views. Okay. So I always do this right immediately after set content view before I do anything else. Because you really want to have your views set up as soon as possible. You want to have a reference to all the views as soon as possible so the rest of the code can work with them. Because right now, all three of these variables are null. All three of these variables are null. If I try to do anything with them, things are going to crash. So I want to make sure as soon as possible I start to grab them. So we're going to say main email input is equal to find view by ID r.id.main email input, and I'm going to do that with each of these three fields, each of these three widgets. So main password boop, r.id dot main password input, main login button is equal to find view by ID r.id dot main login button. So from here on out, our code can safely work with those views because they won't be null anymore. Okay. So now I'm going to register my listeners from there. Notice how I'm kind of putting those comments on there and sectioning this code out. Please put those comments in. Please section your code like this. I cannot stress that enough. Please structure your code this way. Okay, next thing up. So the main login button, I need to set an on-click listener. Okay, now I can do this with any of those four approaches that we talked about. Right? Let's keep it short, and I'm going to use a lambda here. Okay, so I'm going to use a lambda here. I'm going to say view arrow boop. I'm going to start it out that way. I'm going to say here, run this code when you click on the button. So for simplicity, why don't we just do some logging? So log.i main activity, and we say the message here is on click. Again, I did not write the part with the colons. That part is just per the editor. I've got a misspelling there. Main activity. So what we should see is when I click the button, it's going to log a message to the login. Okay. I'm going to move this around a little bit so I can get my my emulator on screen at the same time. Oh, I do want to go turn that device frame off, so I'm going to go do that. AVD manager, go here, edit, uncheck. Run it again. There it goes. So there's no device frame on there now. Good. That'll make it take up less space on my screen. And I'm going to need to make it a little bit smaller. Push this over a little bit. Notch down the font size a bit. And there we go. Okay. Retry. There we go. Okay. So now that it's on there, anytime I click the button, you'll see over on the left that it writes this on click message into my log. Cool. Is everybody at the same position where I'm at? Is everybody at the same point? Yes. Because you need to hit Alt Enter because you hadn't imported those yet. No. Alt Enter at the same time. Alt Enter. Import class. and then button this on. So I use Alt-Enter to automatically import both of those. Yep, Alt-Enter. So go select on the part that's red, and do Alt-Enter. You see where it's suggestion. Import class. You see how it's added that import.
We saw just like that.
You still have it.
Yeah, we're looking at that.
Yes, it's going to be. I don't.
That's okay. It's not a small. I'm just following along.
Yeah. It's going to be a longer investigation. For sure.
It's not going to get worse.
Filter down to info. I think you may have given the wrong IDs to the things in the app. So go look at your more than now. Yeah, get the wrong. So you see this here, what home did you have? What's the input? Next label. Okay, version line. So it's science on the box. And let's figure out the law. The one always comes from the device. Seems like one button is there. What's the one view? And then so on both of those, go ahead and wipe them up. Writing on the Nexus S with a red. Okay. So you kind of see where we're starting, right? So we've got a reference to our inputs and our buttons, and we've got them, we found them here, and then we're starting to hook up the listeners here, okay? So what I want to start to do is start to kind of show you some tools that you can use to give the user feedback, okay? So notice here that this log is being written to Android Studio, but the users of your app have no way of seeing that log, right? As far as they're concerned, nothing's happening. They click the button, nothing happens, right? So I would like to let my users know that something's happening, right? How can I do that? What thoughts spring to your mind? What could I do?
Could lock the text field.
Okay. How do these forms usually respond when you try to log in?
Have some kind of text field underneath the button that says like locked in memory, invalid credentials.
Yeah. So like oftentimes if we're doing web development, we might put a message down here that says like invalid credentials. or, oh, those are good credentials, welcome back, we'll send you back to the next screen. But notice one of the things that happens, and this is it's really close here, notice where the keyboard comes up to. It's almost shy of covering up where that message would be. If it's not in that narrow window, it's going to be hidden by the keyboard, and the user will never know what that message was like. Right? So oftentimes, that's not a good solution for most things in the Android world. Most things in the Android world, that's not a good idea to stick a message after the submit button, because your users will probably never see it. Cool. Your users on the desktop will see it, but your mobile users largely will not see that. Because the keyboard's usually going to be covering it, or they're not looking for it there. So, and because you'll also notice if I click the login button, that doesn't dismiss the keyboard. Right? The keyboard doesn't automatically go away. Let me also turn this on its side. One thing I might notice here, notice that on its side, something's weird. Do you notice how the device didn't rotate? Okay. These emulators, most of them, the way they ship, at least the newer ones, they don't ship with auto rotation turned on. You actually have to turn it on. So you'll want to go up on your emulator to the top and click this box, this auto rotate icon. Boop. That's going to turn auto rotation on. And that way, when I turn it, it will turn the device like so. Okay. Now, let's look at what this looks like in mobile, in that landscape view. Look at how much the keyboard's covering. Keyboard's covering the entire screen in landscape now. Does everybody see that? So this is our limitation, right? Which actually puts us at a point, any message I show up on the view, I can't see any of those messages. Do you see it? It's a problem, right? So I have to have some way to show the user a message that's going to interrupt this flow. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you two tools here that are available in Android for showing messages. Okay. One of them is what we call the toast, and one of them is what we call a Snackbar. Both of these are tremendously useful. Okay. So let's go back to Portrait for a second. I'm going to show you how you generate a toast. So down here in the on-click listener, I'm going to write toast dot make text. Okay, make text takes two arguments. It takes a context, or sorry, three. It takes a context, a string, and a duration. Okay, now we haven't talked about context yet. The short answer to what is a context is it's your activity. Your activity is your context. So what I would like to do is put this as my context. Okay. It's not going to work. We'll explain why it doesn't work. But I would like to put this. Okay, next up. Actually, I think in this case it might. This on click as my message. And the duration, I'm going to go to toast dot. So toast has two constants that represent either a short duration toast or a long duration toast. It's how long it's going to be on screen. So let's say I put a short duration toast that's going to appear there, and I'm going to then call show. I'm going to chain all that together. I have to make my font pretty small to fit all that on one screen. So toast.makeText, and then at the end of that I'm calling show. So this is going to show a toast message. So we make it first, and then we show it. If you just make it, forget to show it, it won't actually appear on your screen. So let me run that again. When I click the button, there we go. So there's my toast down on the bottom. That's what the toast message looks like. And in fact, if the keyboard's up, it will actually appear on top of the keyboard. So the user can still see it even if the keyboard's up and blocking their view. Cool? Okay. So this is a really, really helpful tool and has been in Android for literally forever. You've probably seen it in a lot of different apps. This historically was used for a lot of debugging. So there's some, that's mainly one of the reasons this has been used is largely for debugging. It's worth mentioning that these toasts have some interesting behaviors in the fact that if you tell it to show a toast and then change screens, it will still show that toast on the next screen that you go to. Or even if you leave the application, toast can still appear in other applications from your application. So if you're seeing a toast, it may be from your app, it may be from a completely other app because other apps can show toasts and they just appear on screen. Cool? Okay, but this is one way you can show a message to the user. Right? One way you can show a message to the user is through a toast. Kind of see where it works. It's a really good debugging tool. You'll be using this early on for a few things. I also want to show you while we're here a newer tool which is called the Snackbar. So this is snackbar.make. Instead of snackbar.make, instead of toast.make text, snackbar.make. It takes a few parameters. So the first parameter that it wants is actually a view. So I have to give it something. I'm going to give it the login button, main login button. I'm going to give it the activity, which is this, the context. I need to give it a message. So that's going to be on click. And then it needs a duration as well. The duration is a little bit different. It's snack bar dot. And I'm going to do length long. So it's worth noting that there are two different sets of constants. There's one set of constants on the toast, and there's another set of constants on the snack bar. And then I call show. It's almost the same as what we had before. Now, what is it not like? Oh, did I get these out of order? Okay, yeah, context first, view second. So it should be this first, and then main login button second. So when that runs, it's going to look like this. So there's this nice black snack bar that appears on the bottom, but generally a lot more user-friendly. So it's a kind of a more modern material design blends in there. So that's if you're going to actually do this not just for debugging, it is recommended that you do snack bars instead. There is one caveat here. You might notice that when the keyboard's up, the keyboard actually does hide that snack bar. Basically what's happening is that the snack bar is appearing in the bottom corners of the actual view, of the actual activity, and the activity does actually extend underneath and behind the behind where the keyboard is. So one thing I could do in order for this to be visible is basically change the size of the activity. So there is a way to change there's a way to change how it resizes, so it can resize when the keyboard is up. I believe that we have to go back to the manifest to change that. So if I go back up to manifest and I go up here to the main activity, so I've got name and exported, Android, and what mode is this? Windows Soft Input Mode. That's the one I want. So Windows Soft Input Mode, adjust resize, I believe, is the setting that we have to change in order for it to function. There it goes. So if we apply adjust resize to the activity, then that takes care of making the snack bar visible at all times. I find for most activities, it makes sense to go ahead and set it to adjust resize is usually helpful. What's that? I don't know. Okay, that's fine. So try to run it and see if it works.
What is it with testing? Oh,
So the snack bar should appear.
it just took my window and pushed it up. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. So if you hit sign in, see what's up here instead of being all the way down behind the keyboard.
Interesting.
So that's what that changes.
It's only able to do that because there's white space with nothing.
Basically, yeah.
This was just graphic for you, I'm not really sure.
Okay, let's take a look at it.
Is it anyone who was crashing? Yeah, and it's like it opens it up, and it means
Okay. Let's do one thing. Let's turn off whether the AV manager and turn off the frame first. Okay. Okay. We'll turn off, check it, and then check it. And finish. Go ahead and hit it out. And like this. And try to run. Hopefully that'll help. If not, you get that working. Let's see. We'll get over here. Still have one issue. I added this. Okay, we're missing a greater than of one. And you have an extra one. Thanks. Be very, very cautious about using editing videos. So, if you're talking doing that, usually that gets replaced with that into. So what's happening right now is we're trying to manage the existing. So as we're trying to button two, but there is no button two. Do the design, so it's main button. This is probably going to be that. Really need to
So that I use. So that's where I look at the factory. So go ahead and change that one. Probably mouse. Get the password. Yeah, so it's set button. We have to go to the home room and find all the home room basically start. So that's good there. So now we got the slide and we can you do need to remember how you should have a label for everything. That's important. Inputs always have. So that's why I got two labels, two inputs.
Okay, so we've kind of seen how to do those two pieces. Another thing that oftentimes comes up, you might notice when I click on the login button that it doesn't dismiss the soft keyboard. Okay, does everybody see that? It doesn't dismiss the soft keyboard. Okay, so oftentimes one thing we want, kind of an unspoken feature, is usually when you submit a form, when you submit something like this, we want the keyboard to go away. Okay, making the keyboard go away in Java is hard. It's a pain in the butt. There is some code. I'm going to give you that code. Don't worry about understanding what that code does. I'm going to say offhand. Don't worry about understanding what that code does, because it basically doesn't matter. It's something that everybody who's programmed with Android has complained that this shouldn't work the way it does, but it is the way it works. Okay, so this is the place where it's hard enough that it's something I can't even personally remember off of the top of my head. So what I do is I go to Google and I look it up. So Android hide soft keyboard. Okay. I have a helpful little plugin installed on my computer. It's called grepper. I do use grepper for some things. And this is actually enough of an issue that there's an answer here on grepper. Okay. So this is what I use. This is hide keyboard function. So what I want you to do is copy this code, copy what you see up here, and toss it. We're going to toss that into Android Studio. I'm going to toss it down on the bottom here, and I will also share it in Discord. Because it is a monster of text. There's a bunch of things you can see that are appearing red because you need a whole lot of imports to make it work. And basically, I'm just going to go through here and hit Alt Enter and import all of those things that are missing. All those things in red. So Alt Enter for view, Alt Enter for consent, import class, input method, activity, and then it's finally down here. So that's what we bring in. Okay, so it takes two things. In order to be able to hide the keyboard, you need a context and you need a view. So your context is your activity. It always has to be your activity in this case. And your view actually doesn't matter what you use as long as it's something on screen. So I'm going to use the main login button again because, again, it doesn't matter actually what I use. So in here, when we click on the button, I'm going to call hide keyboard, this, and main login button. That's what's needed to make this magic happen here. So when I click on the button, it's going to make the keyboard slide down. That's what all of that's for. For most of your projects that you do, you'll need to bring in this block of code. For most of the projects that you do this semester, if you have anything with inputs whatsoever, this is an expected behavior. This is an expected behavior that when the user submits it, the keyboard should go away. Your assignment might not always say that, but I'm expecting it. Okay? It's a really, really big deal in terms of using it. So that's how we do it. There's some magic happening there with the system service, the input method manager. If you want to dive into it, you can. But it's really a very deep rabbit hole in terms of things to look at. And most of the things covered in there is stuff that we won't use for any other purpose this semester, except to hide the keyboard. Okay? Cool? Questions? Does that kind of make sense? You kind of seen where we're going with this? So, now that we've understood the basics, right? We've understood how to show the user some information. We can show them either a toast or a Snackbar. And we've also seen how to hide the keyboard. Let's look at actually implementing this handler. Okay, so what do we want it to do? We probably want it to maybe check the credentials, say either, okay, these credentials are good, or these credentials are bad, right? Pretty easy pathway. So let's say I'm going to do that. I'm going to comment out both of these two lines here, the toast and the snack bar. They'll come back, but I want to get rid of them for the moment. I'm going to hide the keyboard as the first thing I do, because regardless of whether or not it's successful, I want to hide the keyboard. Okay, so then I'm going to say if the credentials are valid, we want to go one route. Otherwise, we want to go the other route. Okay, so if the credentials are valid, basically I want to show one message. And if the credentials are invalid, I'm going to show a different message. Okay. So maybe the message I show in both of these routes, maybe I use a snack bar for both of those. So snack bar, snack bar. What message should we show if their credentials are valid? What message should we show?
Welcome.
Welcome. Okay, so let's say welcome here. And maybe on the other side we say something like bad credentials. So we're going to show a toast either way, whether they're valid or invalid. Okay, and I figure out how I'm gonna check them. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind, this is the same as how things work with C#, and it's the same work how on the web. These are references to the controls, right? They are not references to the actual text that's in the box. Okay, so if I want to get the text out of the box, I have to ask for it. Is everybody clear with that? So these edit texts are not the actual text. It's just the control. So if I want to get the user's email and password that they've typed in, those are going to be as strings. So maybe I say string email is equal to main email input dot get text. Okay. Get text is how I get the text that's inside of the input. Does everybody see the red underline on there? Where I say string email equals main email input dot get text. Somebody read off that message. Hover over it and see what it says. So you can decipher what the error is. Yes. It's a common gotcha.
It won't let me hover over it, but it gives me an error message in the bottom left corner.
Okay. Okay. What does the error message say?
But now it's letting me hover over it. Incompatible types.
Incompatible types. Okay. Why are those types incompatible? If I ask for the text on the edit text, shouldn't that text be a string? What type is it? What type does character does a get text return?
Whatever an editable is.
There you go. So it required a string, but it provided an editable. So get text returns an editable. Okay. This is one of those weird Android nuances. Okay. What is an editable? Okay. In terms of the class hierarchy, in Java there is a string class. Okay. In Android, there's also an editable class, which is what we're getting here. This one only exists in Android, doesn't exist in Java. This one exists in all flavors of Java. Okay? So it's Android specific. String is a subclass of something called a character sequence. String is a subclass of character sequence. Editable is also a subclass of character sequence. Character sequence is kind of like the name implies. It's a sequence of characters. Okay? Character sequence is the base class for anything that behaves like a string. Anything that behaves like a string is a character sequence. Cool? So oftentimes you may see in the APIs, you're going to see more often, you're going to see the term character sequence and less often the term string. Okay? So, all strings are character sequences, but not all character sequences are strings. So in this case, we've got editable, which is not a string. Everybody see this? It gets you pretty quick. Now, the reason why this is, editable includes some additional functionality. Namely, in your edit text, your text fields can actually include not just text, but also formatting. Actually, these allows you to make text bold and italic and underlined and such. They do actually include formatting bits. Okay, and so if I were to take this, well, strings doesn't support formatting, but editable does. Okay, so I've got to get it, because I want to get rid of all the formatting, I actually need to get it from an editable to a string. Cool. Okay. If you wanted all that formatting stuff, then you would keep it as an editable. But because we're trying to throw it away, we want to get to a string. Good news is that conversion is actually really easy most of the time. I can just call toString. So I say get text toString, ToString takes it from an editable over to being a string. Throws away the formatting in the process. Unfortunately, that does mean you're making a copy of the string. Anytime you call ToString, you're making a copy of whatever's in that field. So if for whatever reason they've typed in 1,000,000 characters into that text fix, I just made a copy of that 1,000,000 character array. So performance implications, right? That's not a free little operation. Most of the times you don't notice it, but it is there. Okay? So that will get me to the string email by calling ToString. Next up, we're going to do the same thing with the password. String password main password input get text ToString. So that gets us to a point where we have email and we have the password and we have them stored in variables. Okay. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to say, okay, I know what the user typed in. Is it right? Is what they typed in correct? So we want to compare. And so maybe I say email is equal to pick an email. And maybe I just type in maybe admin at example.com as the email that we want. And we want them to type in the password as password. Keep it simple. Now, try it out. If you try this code out, see what you get. See what you get when you type in the correct email. Right? What does it say? Invalid metrics, right? Why is it saying invalid metrics? That's what we looked at yesterday. Right? So you see how my equal signs is not working because you see how those equal signs are a little highlighted? You see how they're highlighted in yellow? It's actually warning me about this very problem. It says string values are being compared by equals. You probably should have used dot equals, right? So I actually need to convert this over to use equals instead of using the equals comparison. So let's do that. Dot equals like so. Dot equals like so. And that way, if the user types in that same email and password, then they'll get it. So I can test that now. So admin at example.com tab password login. Right. Cool. That's what we want to see. Right. So we've seen a number of things in here. We've seen how to respond to events. We've seen how can you respond to when the user clicks on a button. We've seen how can you show toast messages in Snackbars to tell the user information as need be. We've seen how to get the value out of the text field. We've seen how to work with that and how to check those strings match a certain string. And then to show the according message with the insert. So that gets us to a pretty good understanding of the basics on Android. Cool? Everybody good with that? Make sense? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set you free now on working through the first lab assignment. So I need to pull that up. Under Inside Ranken, you'll find the Lesson 1 Code Labs, which is this document here. What you'll want to do is, first things first, follow this link here. Okay. So you're going to follow that link. It's going to lead you to GitHub Classroom, and you're going to pick your name and you're going to create your repository. It's up on the main page. So you leave that. There it is, all inside Ranken. The place you're going to find this is right here under Unit 2, where it says Labs, Lesson 1 Code Lab. That link will take you to this document, which then you'll follow this link right here. You're going to see your name on the list. So I'm going to go find my name. Hit OK. It's going to say, do you want to accept this assignment? So this is just for Lesson 1. And then it'll go through and start creating a repository for you. You're going to be using this repository to actually do the lab assignment. You may end up needing to refresh the page, which I had to refresh it here to get it to pop up the link. So you'll see that there's the link to the repository there now. Open that in a new tab. That's going to bring me over here. Okay. So once you get to here, you can go to the code drop down and you can do clone and bring it down onto your computer. So go ahead and go through that process now to create the repository and get it. To refresh the page.
We can put it anywhere we want, right? Yeah. There we go.
It should be one of those places you excluded in the virus exceptions already. Okay. Figure. It says, check to go virtual method, set on for this and on that. So you kind of call this on something that's currently on. Okay? So that means that this failed. Yeah. So what you want to do is go back to here, check that this has the right ID, and then it has a good. So change the ID of that to Morgan. I don't know why it didn't stop filming because of the out. Okay. So I'm not entirely sure why I thought you already had one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did, but I think it's already.
But that. That would explain why it's crashing. So you can see that in a second. So, let's see. It should be stuff saying activity on that. So this should say the wrong something. But it looks like English should be a comparison. Here's something. Yeah. So you don't want to open it from there. Okay, go ahead and close it. So just plumb it down and kind of pause. Really, that here, so the plumb, and that. That combination, maybe that is. We need to put this on pause. And we go through the link that I provided to preview the pause. So it's on inside record. And follow through here, so on the main page, the following page, the lesson equivalent. And follow that person. Okay, so you got the repo code down. Awesome. Okay. Harry, did it fail?
I don't know. So it didn't exit clean.
So say remind me later. Hit retry.
No, I want to log in all the time.
Well, go ahead and put your credentials in.
I do the same. And that's me going to
Okay.
first.
So you may have not followed all the instructions for getting things set up. Because that tells me you probably didn't get your tour scans. So let's see, just checking. Number 4. Let's try it again. Notice that's a different one. Still nothing. So for the moment, just go ahead and do it through the GitHub desktop. You guys have to find it. It's going to be, let's see. Okay, if you look for under Ranken Technical College, yeah, that's on. So go ahead and point that one down and choose where it goes. Good. Okay, so at least it's pulled in. Okay, we pull down. Okay, good. So once you've got this pulled down, I'm going to pull it down myself. So I'm going to go ahead and open it here. Open with artist get. And I am going to put this there. Yes. Okay. Now, back to here. I'm going to actually exit or close the project that we have open. I'm going to go back to the instructions. Okay. So the labs for this week are coming from the textbook that we're using. They're kind of referred to them as code labs. Okay. So there are 5 for this next week. 1-1, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 part A, part B, 1-3, and 1-4. So those are going to correspond with the lesson we're going with. Right now, we're working through lesson 1.1. Tomorrow we'll be doing 1.2. So click on lesson 1.1. This is going to give us some instructions for what you need to do and how you need to do it. Okay. Some of this is going to be review because we've already done some of these things with the project that we just worked with. You can see most of these have an app overview that is going to give you kind of an explanation of what you're building. Here it's really just a simple hello world. Okay. They're going to give you some instructions for installing Android Studio. I do believe that we've already finished that. So you'll kind of walk through here. When it asks you to create a project, which namely here on step 4, it's going to ask you to create a project. Let me show you how I want you to create that project. Okay. The instructions here are for an older version of Android Studio, so they don't exactly correspond to what we're doing here. The one thing to pay attention to is what they call the project. So when they name the project, let's see if we can find that name. There it is, Hello World. So the name that they gave it is Hello World. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back to Android Studio and I'm going to create a new project. So new project. We're going to use empty activity like we've done before. I'm going to call this Hello World again. But the difference here is I'm going to move it to a different location. That's what makes this different. I also in here, I think I need to add in my name. So I think I misspoke yesterday, and you want to do edu Ranken Paul Smith .hello world because they've changed how this operates. Okay. So I've got my student name in there, and in terms of where I'm going to put it, I'm going to go find the repository that I just pulled down, which my repository is in a different place. So D Android, there's the one I'm looking for. So this is kind of what my dialog looks like. I need to actually dig a little bit further. So inside of the repo, I want to put this under 1.1. I'm going to take a screenshot of that. those are things to pay attention to make sure it goes in the right folder. Actually, I'm still missing something because that needs to go into Hello World. Sorry. So it's my repository 1.1 and then the name of the project. There. That's an easy thing to miss. So it's 1.1 and then the name of the project, not just 1.1. All right. So then you're going to hit finish, and that will get you to where you need to be to proceed with the rest of the project, with the rest of the lab. Any questions right now? Yeah. Yes. So you can either use your traditional commit methods and commit the repo as you would normally. Now that you're under your repo, you'll have an option on the left. See, this is labeled commit, and it shows me all the unversion files. So I can do it through this commit window if I want to commit things. And there's a commit and push here button here. And where is, I forget where the push button is. I think it's on this, there it is. So on the toolbar, on the top toolbar, there's buttons for push and pull up here now that you're in the repository. So you'll commit it here and then push it up here.
All of these labs, 1.1 through 1.4,
Yeah.
they'll all be under one repo?
They'll be under this one repo.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so all the ones for lesson 1.1 through 1.4 will be through here. And then we'll go, for the next one, we'll create a new repo for the next level. I think you move some stuff when you have your shooting open. So one thing to do if you're renaming folders, definitely close all your IDs while you're doing that process. So go ahead and just close this. Because whatever's in there is watching as you're making those changes.
So you saw how long it takes that project? You take so we need to go back to English here. And so you're going to close this project and file this project. And then here you're going to see the new file. And so with that, the things I have, this should be this full copy of it. So that's this is what I use. Did you try the access us? You got a access us or the access to? So let's see what we have in that level. Oh, you just try to find out. So you see right now. You understand this one. This is what you phase. Oh, I'm not sure what's going on with it. I really recommend it's under one year. So you're definitely carrying this one. Why? I know that's really good. Yeah, that's a very odd thing to have. So that's something. Same problem? Okay. So did you get any answers as to that what we're looking at? Oh,